So good afternoon, everyone. It is with great pleasure today that we are back with the second installment of our Let's Talk Leadership series. And the goal of this program is for the 100 Black men of Atlanta to take the resources that we have in our organization, the brilliance, the talent that we have, and just have a dialogue, a discussion about leadership, what it means, what the philosophies are, what advice some of our leaders will give future leaders to build content that will help our students in the future as they learn to lead, as they start to take leadership positions. Hopefully these discussions will ring true to them while they're on their leadership journey and help them along the way, and hopefully help clear the path for them as they go on that leadership journey. And so today we have my good friend, business savants, and the general man around the city, Mr. Jay Bailey, with us today. And it is a great pleasure to have him here. So I am going to do an intro of Jay. Then we're going to have our discussion. If there are some questions, you can drop them in the chat box and we will try to get to them before we end. But Jay Bailey, committed to living by his personal motto, build as we climb. And we see that all over. This man truly believes and lives that motto. He's a change agent, thought leader, entrepreneur, and emerging philanthropist. He has dedicated his life to serving others. James was recently named president and CEO of the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, honoring the legacy, the great legacy, and visionary business leadership of Herman J. Russell. He will lead the development of the largest center in America, driven by community impact, devoted to empowering African-American entrepreneurs and small business owners. Over 50,000 square feet, designed to inspire ideas, create jobs, grow companies, and increase wealth in the community. I mean, a big shout out to the Russell family for their contribution to that center. For those that don't know, we honored them last year at our 100 Honors Gala for that commitment to community and just making that lasting impact and legacy in the name of Brother Herman J. Russell. An Atlanta native and diehard Georgia Bulldogs fan, go Dogs.
Dogs.
James has a proven track record of success, recognized by 3 U.S. presidents for his leadership and community efforts. In 2012, James was one of 8 Americans honored at the White House as a champion of change, following in the footsteps of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A graduate of Leadership Georgia, Leadership Atlanta, the Regional Leadership Institute, James was also named to both the Atlanta Business Chronicle and Georgia Trend Magazine's 40 Under 40 Best and Brightest Leaders of the Future. He is a recipient of the coveted Whitney M. Young National Community Service Medallion, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drum Major for Service Award, a New Leaders Council Fellow, and a member of Alpha Phi Alpha and the 100 Black Men of Atlanta. James has served on numerous boards, including the historic Wren's Nest in Atlanta's West End, the Metro Atlanta Chamber Board of Advisors, the Atlanta Beltline TAD Advisory Committee, and chairman of Citizens Trust Bank's Next Generation Advisory Board. I think James's greatest accomplishment is he has a wife, Miss Blaine Alexander. She's an NBC News correspondent, and they live between Atlanta and Washington, D.C. So shout out to Blaine.
No argument there, brother.
So it is with great pleasure that I bring to you my friend and community leader, Jay Bailey. Jay, you ready to talk a little bit of leadership?
Oh, Chairman, I'll follow your lead anywhere, brother. So thank you for having us, but I think it's a powerful opportunity for the 100, as you stated, to share some of what we've learned along the way and to live by the credo, build as we climb. This is exactly what we need to do. Thank you for your leadership, sir.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's talk a little leadership. So tell us a little bit about your journey, man. How did you get here to where you are today?
Wow. I've had an interesting journey. I guess a lot of people look at where we are now and don't think about where we come from. I'm born and raised Atlanta, born on Boulevard, raised in the Deck. There is a difference between Decatur and the Deck. But I've always been an entrepreneur, man. I started my first business at 12. I bought my first house at 19 at UGA in Athens. I made my first million by the time I was 24. But we'll get into it, I'm sure, in the conversation. I didn't have good money role models. I was just kind of doing it on my own hustle. I was an island. So I went from living in a 10,000 square foot home and country club of the South at 26 to literally being homeless at 28, living in a 9x9 storage unit on Mountain Industrial Boulevard in Tucker.
Wow.
It was there, man, where I really realized by the world's standards, I had been successful. The cars, the clothes, the houses, and we'll get into a number of losses that I took along the way. And there was probably a great deal of depression going on, and money became the crutch. But I realized by the world standards, I've been successful, but I had zero significance. I had done nothing to put a dent in this world. When I started looking towards significance, everything started to change. I eventually became an executive with an organization that grew to global scale. Leaving that organization about 4 or 5 years ago, started our own family foundation, and got into a logistics company. I made my soon-to-be wife a promise that I would never get another job again, because I didn't think the world needed another corporate executive or another nonprofit leader. We needed wealthy Black people to start closing the gap until this opportunity came along. And brother, there are very few opportunities in life where you get to be a part of something that you know will outlast you. And there are even rarer moments in life where you get to be a part of something that could potentially change the course of history. And for what we're building at the H.J. Russell Center, brother, we are going to do something that history will never forget. And I had to be a part of that. So this journey that I've taken, entrepreneurship has always kind of been the common thread, but it certainly has not been a hockey stick of everything's been a win. Your boy has taken significant losses throughout life, but I'm a firm believer those losses help create leaders. You got to be on your back. And if you've never been on your back, I question if you've ever really seen the sun.
Well, I tell you what, let's unpack that a little bit. I love talking about the distinction between success and significance. Tell us your thoughts on that. What's the difference between the two?
You know, I think if nobody has helped along the way, if nobody's better along the way, I love what Jay-Z says, man. If you're the only rich person in your crew, then you're not really rich. Significance for me is something that lasts far beyond you. It's never about the individual. And, you know, part of my great epiphany, man, I had a little bit of money, but I was sitting in this 9x9 storage unit and I was thinking about all the money that I would spend. You know, throughout my course, you know, I lost my mother my sophomore year at UGA. And there was this continuous kind of sequence of losses, buried my grandparents, a first cousin to gang violence, my college sweetheart to cancer, just a number of losses over a period of 6 years. And as I'm sitting there with all of this opportunity that I had to do good, I spent 10 grand in the club balling out, but there was no scholarship in my mom's name. How was that possible? I'd have every car, all the clothes or the big houses, and I had put no dent in this world. Like, what are we leaving? What seeds are we planting right now that will grow trees whose shade we'll never sit under? And that's kind of how I encapsulate in a sentence significance. Plant seeds that will grow trees whose shade you may never sit under. It's not about you. It's not about your lifetime, but what are you doing to make sure the generations, maybe even yet unborn, have the opportunity to benefit from your sacrifice? And in my opinion, that's the ultimate kind of definition of what significance means.
Wow, that's awesome, man. I'm with you on that 110%. Let's unpack a little bit sort of the journey. So you mentioned that you had a house when you were at UGA. How did you know to do that? What led you to buy a house at UGA? And then how did you end up in a 9x9 on Mountain Industrial? Like, tell us a little bit about.
So I didn't know how to buy a house. What I did know, I had just pledged a fraternity. I had these fraternity brothers, and then I lost my mom. My father and I had a huge falling out after her death. The kind of thing where I told him, this is transparent, brother. I looked at my father at 18, 19 years old and told him, next time I want to see you is at your funeral. And I left, I was out. So here I am at UGA, you know, on my own. I kind of separated myself from family, you know, just trying to figure it out. And my mother loved Christmas. And when you start talking about necessity leading to ingenuity, my mother loved Christmas. For the first time in my life, I didn't have a home to go home to for Christmas. So I said, hell, if I buy a 4-bedroom house, I can rent out 3 bedrooms and that'll cover my rent payment, because I didn't even know what a mortgage was. There was Norwest Mortgage on Broad Street, eventually became Wells Fargo. I literally walked in and asked the secretary how many houses they had for sale at the bank. They had a good laugh at me, Kevin, but they started to help me along the way, connected me with a real estate agent. I had a plan around, you know, how I could score rent, who I had my leases in place. So I, you know, put together a plan. But yeah, man, it became my first little insight to ownership. And I think that's another one of those concepts, and we may get into the story. Our community doesn't talk about ownership enough. It's my mantra now. First time I ever heard someone talk about ownership, there's a story I tell about how I got into entrepreneurship with my barber. He was the first person to ever talk ownership to me. And with this home, yeah, man, it was really built out of necessity. I didn't have a home, so I sought to go create one. And luckily, man, my 3 roommates, it's amazing how God provides when you start talking about submitting. All of us eventually would lose our mothers. And in that house, we had this incredible support network of people that can understand, and you can't even explain it any other way but God, that he would put 3 brothers that all placed the same fraternity in the same house that would all lose their mothers while they were in college. And, but you know, we had epic times, brother. I was 19 with a swimming pool and a yard, but it made it very difficult. And I had to really grow up quickly, bro, because I had, of course, my schoolwork and trying to graduate and maybe, you know, get good grades, but I also had a mortgage and a car note and a tuition bill and understand how to pay my gas bill. So I was living 2 lives. One of the carefree college student trying to be the big man on campus, but 2 was a very adult life that I was thrust into without any mentorship and understanding how to balance a budget, how to pay my bills, how to actually run a household. And I was doing that at 19, 20, 21, 22. I was at UGA for the 5-year program, so I did a victory. And, but this was an early lesson on how to grow up. But also what it did, Kevin, because I didn't have a lot of my peers that could understand what I was going through, it put me into a silo where I really started to think that I didn't have a support network. So I put a wall around myself thinking that I didn't need anybody. And that was a really big mistake early in life. Didn't really understand the value of mentorship, support, community, brotherhood, those that you can ask questions to, and being vulnerable enough to not know everything. Big mistake early on in life that I paid for dearly later in life. But it was about being vulnerable enough to let people in. And I literally shut a lot of people out.
Wow. So in talking to the young people that may listen into this, what advice would you give them on sort of how you navigated that and how they should be careful to avoid some of those same sort of pitfalls?
You know, some of the best advice that I ever got was from Ambassador Andrew Young. And he shared with me just really bluntly one day, he's like, son, make your friends before you need them. And it hit me like a brick. Kevin Gooch at 19, I guarantee the people that went to school with you saw something in you, in your leadership, in your resilience and everything. They could have made an investment in you, and they knew that in 10 or 20 years, you would not stand still. Building those kind of relationships, because for everybody on the call, business is all personal. Some people kind of believe into this narrative of it's business. It's not personal, it's business. Wrong. I don't subscribe to that. I think business is all personal, and you do business between people. And Kevin, if you and I have a situation and I need some legal help, I'm not going through the website to connect with you. I'm calling you on your cell and say, Kevin, I need your help, bro. And in kind, you're going to respond just like a brother would with a relationship that goes far beyond you being a partner at a major law firm. If you ever need anything from me from the center, it is not a formal process that you submit through channels. No, you text me, Jay, can I use the center next Tuesday? Bet, done. And that's how it works from the lowest level of business to the highest level of business. Those relationships that you make that are authentic will take you a hell of a lot farther than the transactional kind of networking that we tend to think works. Like I gave him my business card, or we're LinkedIn connected, or we're Facebook friends. But if I don't know his dog's name or something about their aspiration or something about their story that's personal, I don't have a relationship with them. Make those friends early on when you have nothing to give. If you and I were sitting at UGA's campus and we were sitting on the wall just hanging out talking about our dreams back then, to know Kevin Gooch now, it's a lot easier for us to do deals because without a shadow of a doubt, our relationship is solid, it's authentic, and it was built before I needed you or could get anything from you or you had anything to give. That's where you got to really look at relationship cultivation. So for young people, especially our project success folks or any young people that are listening, start building that team now. You see those people that you should invest in. You see those leaders that you know are not going to stand still. So start building that network and that circle of people you trust that will carry you for the rest of your life.
We are definitely simpatico and see eye to eye on that. I will tweak it a little bit and say, like, now, where I am now, I often develop my relationships by leading with ways that I can help others.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I see a lot of people, they're looking for who's the big man or woman in the room, and I need to go talk to them and this, that, and the other. But it may be the person in the corner that you could just strike up a great conversation with, build a genuine relationship with, hear what they need, help them out. And you never know where they may end up later, and they can benefit you later. But it's all about the genuine relationship. The person that is not getting any attention, go talk to them and spend some time with them, and don't just go flock to the big person in the room, because everybody's going to do that. And you never know where this person may end up, or just how you can help them. And just the energy of knowing that you were able to help someone else with a phone call. I mean, it means a lot.
Amen, bro. I'm a huge fan of Issa Rae. And when she came into the business, like you said, everybody's going after Denzel. Everybody's going after Omari Hardwick. Everybody's going after the big dogs, right? Everybody. She had this start where you stand model and build with who you're with. Find your tribe and let's build together. All of us ain't got nothing on the bottom. But if we start building together, we'll get to the top together. The African proverb, man, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. She has a philosophy around business and relationships that I admire greatly. And it has everything to do with valuing those people that are within your 3-foot circle. Like you said, it may not be that person that's featured on the dais. It may be that person that's just sitting at the table just like you, hungry just like you, aspirational just like you. And as you said, reaching across and saying, how can I be of help? It's a big deal, man. And we do a little too much celebrity chasing. And I think we don't really realize the impact and toxicity that celebrity has on our community because we ignore so much of the base. We ignore so much of the thing that actually makes our community great. We ignore it for the treetops, never the roots.
And again, it goes back to your point of significance. It really means a lot for you to be able to help that person that's sitting at the table beside you and just play any role in helping them navigate their journey. I mean, and that's what matters.
Yes, sir.
So you talked a little bit about ending up in a 9x9 on Mountain Industrial. Tell us a little bit about those sort of challenges that came your way and how you overcame them to end up being, the big man in the city that you are now.
Bro, I'm still growing. I start every day at zero, bro. It's people, and it may be a fault, and it's maybe something I got to grow with, but I always start every day at zero. I don't take any of that stuff in that bio too seriously. I don't take myself too seriously. It is literally, man, the gaps are so big for those that want to sit back and act like they made it in the face of the gaps we still have. Man, come on. It's a tough time. And literally, Gooch, I literally just started to unpack the trauma that being homeless had on me. Like, this is a very recent phenomenon with some therapy. And Black folks out there that are listening, let it go. Go talk to somebody, get some therapy. You cannot do this on your own. But brother, it was the show Atlanta. I don't know if you watched Atlanta when it was coming on. I almost bust into tears on that final episode where he was living this very kind of normal life during the day and literally walked home, opened up the storage unit and took a nap, then went to sleep. That was my life. I literally bought a cheap, they had LA Fitness on La Vista Road had a sale on memberships, and it was like $9.95 per month. And I got in the best shape of my life, but I bought that membership so I would have some place to take showers. Would walk up there every day to work out, take a shower, get dressed, and get ready for the day. There was a moment of clarity that occurred in that point. I was thumbing through an old photo album, and I'm seeing all these pictures of random kids. They're not my cousins, they're not my friends, but they were at Thanksgiving and Christmas. And the thing about depression, you throw away a lot of the bad memories, but you also leave some of the good behind too, because the good memories are just as painful as the bad. And so I was thinking, who the hell are these kids? But it clicked. The first philanthropist I ever knew was my mother. Although she never made more than 36 grand a year in her life, she was a true philanthropist. And she knew then, like I live by now, you take a kid in a bad environment, no role models, limited exposure, and compounded hopelessness for 10 or 15 years. Why are you surprised they got a gun to your head? If they don't value their life, how could they possibly value yours? And so she used to pluck these kids out of halfway houses and detention centers, lockups, bring them to Christmas dinner, expose them to a new reality, put them around love and dinner and laughter and fun. And she used to make me make my Christmas list every year in August so she could save up her money till December to buy young Kevin something that he would really want. And every year she'd do it. She'd be like, Kevin, baby, go grab that box under the tree. And Kevin run over there and grab that box. Yes, ma'am. But when he looked down, it would have Kevin and big letters on it. And Kevin would tear into it. And it wasn't one of those just throwaway gifts that we give poor people at Christmas. It was something that Kevin would really want, feel seen, feel valued, feel believed in, could fundamentally change the trajectory of that kid. Although she only made 30 some odd $1,000 a year, she literally made the most of it to be significant. It was really at that moment where I started to remember who I was and who I was raised to be, a servant that gave everything when I could. And that's who she was. And that was a lesson that I got from her. And that's really what motivated me to get out of my depression, what motivated me to get motoring and start looking for a way out and how to dig myself out. It was that notion of remembering the significance and service is what I was taught and raised to be and lead with. And until I really recognized that again, I'd have still stayed in that cycle of depression.
Wow. So you continue to serve the community. Tell us a little bit about your role at the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship.
Kevin, we're on to something. I spent significant time in Silicon Valley. I know my folks at Cambridge with MIT and Harvard. I spent time down in Raleigh, Durham, UNC, Duke. Love what they're doing in Nashville. Love what they're doing in Austin, Texas. None of them are Atlanta. None of them have gotten diversity or inclusion right. And I think when you start thinking about Atlanta, Georgia, and the building that we sit in, you got to put it in context. Think of a Black man 70 years ago in the Jim Crow segregated racist South, building a headquarter building that was 50,000 square feet and a full city block wide. This building and where it is directly across the street, I'm looking right at Morehouse, Spelman, Morris Brown, ITC, Clark Atlanta, Morehouse School of Medicine. Directly to our east is Castleberry Hill, one of the largest concentrations of Black businesses in the country. Georgia State is a mile away. Georgia Tech is 2 miles away. What if we were to build this district and we got it all right to be collaborative, to create an innovative, inclusive economy that the world has never seen before? Because I'm gonna tell you, brother, the only difference between Bankhead and Buckhead is access, opportunity, and exposure. And in Atlanta, Georgia, 54% of our population is not participating in the driving of the economy. Because the real story is we lead the country in income inequality, and we're the worst city in the country for economic immobility. There are no poor white neighborhoods in Atlanta, Kevin. There are no failing Latino schools in the APS school system. There are no Asian ghettos. The demographic driving these deplorable statistics are Black people. And if we can't have a conversation about race when we're talking about the economic development and growth of this city, then we're being intellectually disingenuous in our approach to try to move the needle. We've got to have a conversation about how do we weaponize and energize the brilliance that occurs south of I-20. Because lots of people have heard me. I don't think there's anybody more innovative on the planet than a single mother with 2 kids making 17 grand a year. That woman outthinks pretty much everybody that you know. Her resilience, her grit, her stick-to-itiveness, her ability to problem solve. But what if she believed that her ideas mattered and there was a way to get her ideas to the marketplace? The Russell Center literally stands at the nexus of access, opportunity, and exposure. How do we get the tools, the resources, the readiness, the access that our community needs to fly, and giving them a safe space to fail and fly? Because belonging is really in this conversation, because I think far too many programs get it wrong. They focus on diversity and inclusion, but don't focus enough on belonging. having that belief, that self-confidence, that self-esteem, and knowing that I am in a space that respects my ideas, my thoughts, and respects me enough to know that I don't know it all. I can be vulnerable enough to learn. I can take off the mask. I can take off the armor in my space. It's why HBCUs will always be relevant, because they have provided that for Black students for a century. And I want to bring that same kind of HBU culture, covenant, community to the entrepreneurship and small business space, where it's much deeper than just curriculum or a program. We won't be able to program our way to prosperity or program our way out of poverty. We've got to look at a different model that focuses on community, culture, covenant, and a continuum of engagement to make sure businesses get the real-time solutions they need in real time, not just episodic programming. We're bringing a different model to the marketplace, and it's owned by the community, in the community, by the community, for the community. And that's different from anything else we've seen in the country.
I can only imagine being able to harness, as you mentioned, that talent south of I-20, but also that hustle and work ethic, right? There's this misconception that Black folks are lazy. And I was having this conversation with my mentee actually about an hour ago. We were talking about the election and stuff and taxes and redistributing wealth, if that's, that's so scary. But I was talking about one of my other mentees' moms that works 3 jobs, maybe sleeps 4 or 5 hours a night. And the fact that people would consider her lazy because she has not had the opportunity to be successful, or someone to help her harness all of that energy that she's given to make 6 figures. But she will outwork so many people that I know that make 6 figures. It's just, it's disheartening to know that these folks are viewed as lazy when they are like killing themselves and working to the bone. She gets up at 3 a.m. in the morning to go work at the airport.
Bro, it's all about access and exposure. I didn't know what graduate school was when I went to UGA. What a master, like an MBA, had never really talked about that with anybody, but I had friends that have been talking about MBA since elementary school. I didn't know even the SAT to get into a good school. I took the SAT, the very last opportunity you could take the test to be eligible for college. But some of my friends that had higher exposure had been taking the SAT since 8th grade and took it 7 times and just got the aggregate of their best score. That's not because they were smarter than me. They just had more information. And so when we start talking, even the 100 Black men, our motto, they've got to be it to see it. And it's hard to aspire to something that you've never been inspired by. And when we have all of this grit, determination, and pure work ethic, sacrifice, all of this determination, grit, resilience that lives on these south sides of every city in America, what if they believed? What if they knew that there was a better pathway? What if we could just take 10% of that ingenuity? What if we put the same amount of effort in finding the next H.J. Russell as we did the next LeBron James? Because I guarantee if you can throw a ball, catch a ball, or kick a ball, I don't care what little hood you're from or what small town, they will find you, nurture that talent, develop that talent in hopes of finding the next LeBron James. Well, if we can do it with athletic talent, I guarantee for every one LeBron, there are 1,000 individuals that can run $1 million company in hoods everywhere around America. We just don't spend the resources, the time, or create the pathways to take that brilliance and bring it to the marketplace.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit more about sort of your leadership philosophy. You lead a team at the Russell Center. You led a team over at Operation Hope. You've been the chairman of the board of the Citizens Trust Advisory Committee. Tell us a little bit about your sort of philosophy on leadership. How do you lead, and how did you develop that philosophy?
Everybody's the CEO. Act as if. I got that from a movie, Boiler Room, but it is act as if you were the CEO. And empower people, because I think that far too many times organizations get focused on that one leader, and oftentimes that one leader starts to believe that they are bigger than the organization. They become the face of an organization. They become the only point of contact for an organization, and institutions are what gonna move us forward. Who was the president of Harvard in 1994? You don't know. Who was the president of Harvard in 2002? You don't know. Harvard is an institution. And so looking at institution building, it's more than just the one person. You've got to empower people, because I tell my team all the time, Chris Hale, if you're listening or out there, Chris has been supporting me for several years, but I tell people all the time, I can't wait till Chris calls me and quits. because I want to push Chris to the point where she has her own business. She sees her own vision. And it's not about somebody reporting to me. It's about getting somebody to the point where they exit and they fly. Eagles push their babies to get out of the nest and fly. And in my opinion, philosophy around leadership, if you are not working to make people better, if you have not asked your team members what is their big vision, what is their big goal, then you're not really leading. It's about you and them kind of worshiping you versus you doing everything within your power, your resource, your network to make sure that they have a pathway to live out their best lives. Because I guarantee, guys, those of us that dream, somebody is relying on your dream coming true to send their kid to college. And how dare us as leaders have so much ego and so much arrogance that we don't want to fan that flame and give those people that are coming under our care and under our leadership the tools necessary to be the very best that they can be. Brother, I love turnover. Why? Because it means that people are growing. I love to see people along my kind of coaching tree. That's why I love Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy had a coaching tree like no other. Head coaches that came up under him. Mr. Russell, if you're in Atlanta, C.D. Moody, Egbert Perry, Noel Khalil, T. Dallas Smith, all of these Black men that are killing it in real estate all came under Mr. Russell. It wasn't just about him. It was about how many of you guys can I help along the way to get to the next level and probably farther than I ever got. That's where leadership has to be.
And it's back to that theme that we keep hearing, that significance theme, right? It's about developing others to make sure that they can accomplish their goals. And it's not just about you and your goals. So you definitely are walking it like you talk it, brother. Definitely walking it like you talk it. Now, when Jay Bailey was on campus at UGA, would he have seen you being where you are today, or what were your dreams back then? And what would you tell a student about what they're dreaming now versus where they may ultimately end up?
Man, you know, at UGA, again, I did not have like the role models that said you could be anything. I remember not thinking that Black people could make more than $50,000 a year. That was kind of my sphere of influence. Judges, attorneys, big folks, they would make 50. If you could make 50,000 a year, that is about the height of your success. Until I was exposed to different. So no, I think I had some natural gifts and talents around bringing people together. I had, of course, natural hustle because, bro, I was a kid who used to make popsicles in the ice tray and sell them for $10 in my front yard. I was so cold with it, I used to charge people 50 cents to fight in my backyard. Like, this was kind of hustle that I always had naturally. I brought that hustle to UGA. I brought that certain swagger that comes from Glenwood Road and Candler Road and Wesley Chapel. But then I also brought a sense of community to UGA. Didn't know how it would all come together because I didn't have a lot of examples of what this stuff together could look like going forward. I didn't know what a nonprofit was. Certainly corporate leadership. Who thought of someone being a CEO or an executive vice president? I didn't start learning those terms until I got into my first job with Hershey Foods Corporation. Oh, you're a senior vice president. What does that mean? Executive vice, what's a CEO? And you know, like you said, put me in an environment where I'm 8 years old and I got all the tools and I got all the mentorship. I got all the advice. I got all of the support, all of the sponsorship. Who knows where I would have taken that natural ability and gone with, but I kind of had to get that out of the mud through my own trial and error, whole lot of L's that I had to take, a whole lot of being very in dark places and not knowing where to go and making wrong decisions. But, you know, my job now is to get the information, the access, the exposure to people so they don't make the same mistakes. Let's mitigate the things that you do not know that you need to know to be successful. That's my job. Mitigate the things that are gaps. And that's where we live. It's just that simple. And I didn't have that. If I had it, I started to think, wow. But I tell you, brother, I redefined hell, in my opinion. You know, my definition of hell is if when you die and God shows you everything that you could have had if you just believed. That's hell to me. Looking at if you believed in his grace, his faith, and yourself and what he inherently put in you, and he showed you everything that you could have, if you just believed it was possible, that's the new kind of hell for me. Because now some of the things that I'm able to do now, I never would have believed I could. And now it's hard for you to tell me anything that you think I can't have. And I'm thinking about, I want to see it all. And if I fail, that's fine. I'll just fall and learn. But guess what? I'm going to keep pushing because I got a lot of ground to make up, brother, because I spent a lot of years of my life not believing that there were higher heights to get to, not believing that people that looked like me belonged in higher spaces, that those were reserved for people that looked like them. And once I developed that kind of confidence, courage, belief, and I'm still working on it, guys. I don't have it perfect. Of course, I still have these restrictor plates on me. But Kevin, I'm in a space right now that, look, man, I'm trying to do it for generations yet unborn. I'm trying to plant as many seeds that I can that will grow those trees whose shade I'll never sit under. Because right now I'm focused on legacy. How do we build it? How do we create it? It's not sustainable to just have one Russell family. We need 50 Russell families. And I want Gooch to go from partner to president to owning his own firm. Because why does King and Spalding? Because those are two names. King and Spalding are two names. Every law firm that you're going to name in Atlanta that's big and making millions and millions of dollars, there's somebody's name. So why isn't Gooch just as powerful as Spalding? And it could be, it should be. And we need to start, pumping that kind of belief into each other. Because, brother, you have everything that they had when they started their firm, everything. How do we start believing again?
And that's a word right there. That is a word. Let me ask you about some of your, let me back up a little bit. I ask you that question because oftentimes with our students, they think that when they're 19 or 20, they sort of have their plan and they've already written out where they're going to end up, and they don't know the possibilities at that time. And I often want them to understand that just because you thought you were going to go somewhere and your path went a different direction, that doesn't mean that you're a failure, because you could end up being the CEO of the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So, be open-minded, be flexible, but most importantly, never let other people put their restrictions on you, because you never know where you could end up.
Bro, that's the gospel right there. There's nothing to add to that. The old saying is what? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plan. And I think because if we're humble enough to know that we don't know everything, if we're smart enough to know that we're actually not that smart, there's always something else to learn. We can't say this is exactly how it's going to be. There's no way of us knowing that. And a mentor of mine once told me, Jay, let the game come to you. If you're in the game and you've done what you needed to do to be talented, you know that you can get the ball in the hoop, you know that you know what to do in a game time situation, then let the game come to you. Don't force the game. You'll lose that way every time. And it was huge advice when I started to look like I want to manufacture wins or control every situation. Wrong. Release some of that control, throw some faith back in there and see the whole floor, because I guarantee you're going to miss something thinking that you have all of the answers.
Yeah, I will tell you that I was at Emory, a junior or a senior at Emory, before I knew that the businesses in the top of all of these skyscrapers in Atlanta were law firms. I had never heard of King and Spalding or Alston and Bird until I was 22, 23 years old.
Yep.
And so you never know where you're going to ultimately end up. And now I'm at the third largest law firm in the world.
In the world.
And I had no clue.
But you're a partner at the third largest law firm in the world. But just as you said, King and Spalding, Alston Bird, if you break it down, those are individual people with a name who had the belief and the confidence that they could build something that would last generations. You make a pretty decent salary, I'm sure. You probably made a decent salary at Alston Bird. But with that, Alston and Bird were the people that created the ability for you to do that, bro. And in Atlanta, Georgia, bro, if there is a city in the world that could create the Alston Bird, King and Spalding, Greenberg Trial, all of these folks that looks like you, it's here. And we're going to show the rest of the world that it's possible. And I think Atlanta is uniquely positioned if we got it right. We got this congregation of Fortune 1000 companies. We've got all of these colleges. There are more Black enrolled college students in Atlanta, Georgia than anywhere else on the planet. We're the pipeline. So, shame on us if in 10 years we've not created something that history will never forget. It ain't like we ain't got the tools. It ain't like we ain't got the ingredients. It ain't like we ain't got the talent. We have a you, Gooch. We have a me. We got an organization like the 100 Black Men of Atlanta that is fraught with individuals that can make significant change. You can't tell me that all of those names on those skyscrapers, on those buildings, all of them are smarter than anybody that we have in our community. Wrong. I will not believe that.
So tell me about your 2 or 3 greatest accomplishments, and on the flip side, 2 or 3 failures that you had to overcome.
Wow.
Like, what do you want to be known for as sort of a couple of your accomplishments along the way? And then I think it's very important to talk about those failures and let our students know, just because you had a failure, that shouldn't hold you down.
Oh, bro. I mean, I think where I knew that significance thing had paid off when I got a personal email from President Barack Obama. And I was with 2 people, and I actually had to show them my phone and say, is this real or is this like a hoax or some spam? Inviting me to the White House to talk about my story. And then to, after that, later be, I think you read it in the bio, listed as a champion of change, following in the footsteps of Martin Luther King Jr. I could not believe it. And it's still one of my proudest moments, greatest accomplishments. I think there are a couple of mentees that I have that have done well, that have followed footsteps, that still communicate with me greatly. And one of the proudest moments are those people that are doing well, that I had some hand in or some support in. It's always about mentorship with me, bro, and trying to find, ways that I can continue to give. And for every phone call that I get from someone saying that I made a difference, or asking for support, or asking for that connection to someone, like for everybody that I've helped, in their job or their position, because I was able to use my relationships to call a senior manager or an executive and say, hey, I got my guy coming or girl coming. But this last thing, bro, is around ownership. If I have a legacy that I want to live, it's around own the dirt. All the wealth in the world comes from the earth, and we don't own any of it. And I try to really push now, everybody that I mentor, a philosophy that we're going to bring to the Russell Center. You need to start eliminating the number of people that you have to ask permission to be successful. If I got to ask 6 people to say yes for me to live my dream, then I got the wrong dream. Kevin, you got to say yes, and April, you got to say yes, and Jawan, you got to say yes, and you have to say yes, and then I got to go to the bank for them to say yes, then you know what? It's not your dream. Too many people have control over it. When you start talking about own the dirt, that power that is in ownership, when you talked about those skyscrapers downtown, one of the things that led me to leave my last position is I looked at that skyline and it broke my heart. Because in the city that I was from, that was at that point 54% Black, I looked at the skyline, through the entire skyline, and I didn't see any buildings that we owned or control in the Black Mecca. But on one line, we're saying we run stuff, but we don't own any of it. And I think the cost of perception is killing our community. This perception that we run things, but if you boil it down to who's really in charge, who has the money, who has the revenue, who's creating the jobs, whose names are on top of those skyscrapers, it ain't us. We got to change that. So when you talk about failures, as I shift from those, it's, the successes around the Obama recognition, seeing the support manifest itself of mentees and relationships that I've had along the way. But now really focusing on this ownership narrative. What do we own and what do we control? That's kind of my high right now. Those lows come from places like, yes, thinking that money was the fix. Because I think far too often we think the Mercedes and the big house and the nice clothes is the goal. Like I got friends today that aspire to a Mercedes and it goes no higher than that. And in my life, and I'm not judging at all because that was my existence several years ago, we got to look at higher aspirations. And that was one of my failure points. Money was the object, and money should never be the byproduct. Stevie Wonder didn't start making music to make money. It's because he loved music. And by being the very best at making that music that he loved, he became wealthy and sold lots of albums. I fell into that trap of making money the objective. When you talk about failure, I've had multiple businesses that have gone belly up throughout my life. Why? Poor planning, never reached out. I never really looked to build a support network. I was trying to do everything on my own because I wanted my name on the top of the bar instead of looking at building a team. That piece is something that I think inherently in our community we have. This whole notion of I'm the island. It needs to be Bailey Inc. and no one else. But Mr. Russell had a great saying, you know, collaboration beats competition every day of the week. And I think the thing that made us so great when we think about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Auburn Avenue, and Jackson Ward, and all of these places that we herald as these Black Wall Streets, one of the things they had going for them was collaboration and community. But right now, unfortunately, the only value add proposition that we have for success in our community is how far we can move away from it. My income goes from 40,000 to 400,000. The first thing I'm probably trying to do is find my house north of I-20 versus trying to build where I am. And I took some of that as a failure from my part because I didn't see the value in my own community. Taking the resources that I have and reinvesting it in my community. Buckhead and Alpharetta and Johns Creek are Buckhead, Alpharetta, and Johns Creek because people reinvest in that community and they bring the value to that community. We've got to reimagine how our community sees value in its own reflection again. And we've not done a very good job of that because I look at the West Side and I think, wow, it's beautiful. The Bluff, that ain't a street name. That's topographical. The Bluff is called the Bluff because it's got the highest elevation downtown Atlanta. And if you've ever been on the West Side, it's got beautiful skyline views. We got to see the value in it. Gentrification can work multiple ways, but we've got to see the value in our own community, ourselves, our businesses. And I lost that along the way. So I'll take the biggest L, Kevin, and not necessarily believing in the power of us.
So you mentioned collaboration and we talked about you leading teams. How do you, and we talked about how you want to, you know, create your coaching tree and motivate the people that you work with to be successful. What are some of the tactics that you use to sort of motivate those that work with you?
Put them out there. You know, somebody asked me to speak at something. Oh, I can't do it. Shalon, if you're listening out there, Shalon, I know you got a interview coming up, or we just brought on a new COO. You know, I lower me to uplift them, give them the opportunity to be out front, them to stretch, for them to take the, you know, to be the big man or big woman on campus, to know that they have the capacity and the capability. Again, if I was trying to teach my son how to play baseball, I wouldn't buy him a book on the game of baseball. I'll get a bat and a ball. We go outside and I hope he gets hit with a pitch. You have got to put the people that are on your team in positions to win. You got to let them take the last shot sometimes, because one day you're going to rely on them to take the last shot. And if throughout the course of the season, you've never let them try because you always had to take it yourself, guess what's going to happen? The probability of them making it goes way down because you've never undergirded the belief in them that they could do it, and they believe that you believe in them. That self-confidence, self-esteem that you have to put into your team members doesn't just happen organically. You've got to be deliberate and intentional to put your team in a position to win. I believe that you can make that shot. And I believe so much that I'm going to toss the ball to you. Take it. And if you miss, I'm with you. Win, lose, or draw. If it breaks off, that's fine. I'm going to try to catch the rebound and put it back in for the win, but I'm going to believe that you can make that shot. We don't do that enough. I think far too often with leaders, the king syndrome comes in, the queen syndrome comes in, and we want all the attention. We want all the shine. We want all the accolades. And far too many of us are focused on getting credit for the actions or the solutions, and very few of us are focused on solving the problems. And it becomes about me and not the team. It becomes about my accolade and rather than community impact. And brother, it's and then when that one person leaves that organization, the organization withers and dies. You've not built a team that way. You've not empowered others to take the ball and run with it. You've got to do that because you got to look at succession, and it's got to be bigger than you.
On the flip side of that, how do you deal with sort of difficult conversations? That's part of one of the toughest parts of leadership is how do you deal with those difficult conversations when you have a underperformer that you care about? How do you deal with sort of those conversations that you have to have when there's someone that's just not performing well?
I'm still dealing with that, bro. I'm still not good at it. I inherently want to believe that everybody has the capacity to win. But, you know, I've gotten lots of advice and I've seen it work for myself. When you've got someone that's underperforming, you got to ask yourself a question. Do you believe that they can do work at the next level, or what can they reach your expectation? If that answer is yes, then you got to be very deliberate, intentional in focusing that energy into that employee, that team member, to perform at a higher level. But if in your heart you believe they'll never get there, it's probably in your best interest to bench them or get rid of or cut quickly. Because what you will do is literally frustrate yourself to the point of being useless. I mean, like you're literally in this very toxic circular kind of relationship that gets neither of you anywhere, and you're certainly not moving forward. But if you believe in the person, Kevin, you're on my team, you may be underperforming, but I know that there's a next gear for you. I know it. So it's worth me making the investment in you to get you to that next gear. But if I'm in a situation where I don't believe you got a next gear, then it's probably trying to cut ties, and maybe you join another team where that leader can understand what your next gear is and get them there.
So we'll wrap up with this question, and then we'll see if there are any questions from the chat. So what would you, if someone said they wanted to be the next Jay Bailey, and I'm going to give you two scenarios. One is an 18-year-old kid and one is a 30-year-old. What would you tell him or her to start that trajectory or how to get there?
18-year-old, boy, do not go at this alone. Build your team, find your tribe, lean on your team, trust your team. Nobody makes it by themselves. Underscore, nobody makes it by themselves. And if I could shoot that down to 18-year-old Jay, my life would be really different. 30-year-old Jay.
You lived a little, you got a little bit of work experience. Hopefully you've had some success, but you're trying to take it to the next level. How do you get to that next level?
One, avoid the noise. I think that social media has given us this kind of, back to that whole notion of the cost of perception is killing our community. Popularity ain't power. And there's a difference between being an influencer and having true influence. Influencer may be able to go on Instagram and get 1,000 people to come to a rally to combat a problem or an issue. Somebody with real influence makes one phone call and that problem goes away. I think that when you start to invest in the things that matter most, if you start to live by an ownership code, what do you own and what do you control? At 30, be dangerous by 40 and set that as a goal. I think that far too often we put too much importance on the stuff that doesn't move the needle, the wins that don't win the game. In an attention economy, 100 likes doesn't really mean anything. A million followers doesn't mean anything if on the West Side our people are still struggling and hurting. And don't get caught up in the hype. Again, popularity ain't power. It ain't power. I mean, that popularity piece is sexy, it's intoxicating, but it doesn't move the needle.
Oh, that's incredible advice, man. Incredible. This has been an absolute pleasure. We do have a couple quick questions. One was, while you were doing everything that you were doing in college, and I think it's applicable for today, when you have so much going on in life, family, work, how do you sort of manage all of the tasks, still get some sleep, and find ways to get you some mini mental breaks in there? How do you manage all of that?
Didn't do it well in college. I didn't take any breaks. I was trying to be the big man on campus, throw every party, maybe try to graduate, try to be everywhere, I didn't do it well. I have learned without sacrifice to put self first. If there's not a focus on individual well-being, you are serving no one. I've got enough people that have told me about their nervous breakdowns, that have told me about the strokes they have had, the heart attacks. I've had to bury a team member before. The stress level was so high that he had a heart attack. And seeing that someone that was on your team now laying on the slab pronounced dead because the stress had gotten so high that it took them out of this world. I made the promise, Kevin, it's never going to be that important. You are always going to make time for yourself, your family, some peace. Lots of folks have seen this property that my wife and I bought recently, bro. And it's God would have it that we closed on it right before the whole world went to hell in March. but it has become my peaceful space. And when I'm out there, everything that y'all doing in this city does not matter. I don't think about it at all. I'm able to have my own time, my own peace, and it means everything. I come back on Monday with a clear head because far too often we think that whole busy thing is currency, that I'm so busy, but you never have any time to think. So you're not being strategic. So you kind of figure out, well, if you've been so busy in 10 years, you're kind of in the same space that you were 10 years ago, but you've been busy as hell and you got all these committees and you're doing all these things, but you're not moving forward. You've never given your time to just sit back and see the whole court, strategize, to think about what your next moves are going to be, to even think about what do you want out of life. When's the last time you guys had a time to just sit and think, or giving yourself the time to just sit and think? Because we're just running so damn fast. I put well-being way up there. I'm not one of those people that subscribes to you sleep when you die. Rest, get your mental, your mental well-being intact. Go see some therapy and get some help if you need it, and take the time you need to be great. You need that if you want to be great. And I'm just a firm believer in that.
How do you, as two brothers that did not attend HBCUs, how do we express the value add that HBCUs bring to folks that have not had the HBCU experience?
I went to UGA. My first choices were FAMU and Hampton, but I couldn't afford either. I went to UGA because they had come up with this the Hope Scholarship, and I could go for free. And my parents were slick with it. They let me spend my spring break senior year up on UGA's campus unsupervised, and I didn't apply to UGA. And they knew when I came back that I would want to go to UGA. Both of my parents went to HBCUs, and I oftentimes see on social media this big battle between PWIs and HBCUs. Let's stop it. We know without a shadow of a doubt there is inherent value in belonging and what an HBCU can provide. We'll never be able to get that time back, Kevin, where we're 18 years old, 21 years old, 19 years old on Clark's campus or Morehouse or Howard or Hampton. I long for that, but we can support it. It's one of the things that I do very often, every year, finding an HBCU that I can support in some way. Shout out to Xavier Peoples with his new app, HBCU Change, where you can take the roundup and it donates directly to an HBCU. Albany State University, you got mine. We need those places, bro. It's kind of the model that I built the Russell Center on, an HBCU model for entrepreneurs and small businesses that focuses on belonging. When you hit campus, you can see directly across the campus the president of your student body, the president of the Alphas, the president of your college. All of them look like you. And what does that say to you about your possibilities? It's a real thing, man. And, I never drag my experience at UGA. It taught me tremendous things. So I love my experience at UGA and say go Dogs all the time. But we also oftentimes ignore some of those realities that are staring us right in the face that we had to endure at PWIs. But I always strike down anybody that tries to say anything that closely, remotely hints at HBCUs are no longer relevant.
We talked a lot about building those relationships before you need them. How do you go about doing that? And in particular, during the pandemic, any advice on how you go about doing that? What's sort of the philosophy on building those relationships?
Authentic. I think far too often we go into situations with what we can get. I'm sure you get emails and LinkedIn messages. I've got this thing, Kevin, help me get it. Versus what I can give. I think authenticity is lost in the space of relationship building because I'm trying to game you or finesse you, as the young people say, into getting what I want. And there's no real thought about what I'm bringing to the table. And maybe Kevin's a really good dude. And maybe he and I could have a really strong relationship beyond this transaction that I need him to help me with. Tighten up the circle. Again, you don't need to be on the cover of every magazine and know everybody in the room. I had to learn that lesson too, Kevin. I feel way more comfortable when Blaine and I go to a gala and I haven't shook a single hand. It's just me and her in the corner. We get to love on each other, and that is enough. Before there was a time, brother, where I used to try to work the whole room and go from space to space. Oh, got to shake his hand. I got to talk to her, got to run over there. And you know what? They're doing the same thing. And whatever you said or did probably didn't resonate, and they probably don't even remember it by the time they walk out of the door. But if I've got something really authentic that I need to bring to Kevin Gooch, I come to you. But if it's just me trying to glad hand and be all up in your face, maybe I'll let you be, and I'll wait till the next time I can catch up with you when I have something of real significance and I have an authentic ask that's real that you may care about, and it may be relevant to you rather than just forcing myself on you. Just be real, man. Be authentic. I think it's one of the things that Atlanta started to lose when we start thinking about the Hollywood nature of everything, the glitz and the glam and the sparkly part of it. And we started to lose that thing that made Atlanta so great before, that was really authentic, and it was rooted in deep relationships where folks went over to your house and knew your dog's name, knew your children, knew where you worked, knew where you were from. Those authentic, real deep relationships that mean everything. Got to get back to it. And in the time of COVID, it's tough, but if we can socially distance and maybe meet out in the garage. Blaine does this with her friends, and it's cool, where they pull their cars up, they pop the back, and they sit in the back and do these kind of socially safe distance kind of get-togethers, because relationships are important. We're human beings. We're African-based human beings, and that community is necessary.
So two last questions. The first one is, how can minority technology companies make a difference in Atlanta?
Solving problems. I mean, we got a ton of problems in our community. Solve them. Find problems that you can do something about and do something. Start listing out the 10 top problems that you're seeing, and not that somebody, what are you seeing? What do you have an understanding of 10 problems that we have in our community? And how can you start taking your brilliance to start solving some of those problems? I mean, that's all entrepreneurship really is. It is finding a problem and affixing an economic solution. And if we've got all of this brilliance and all of these problems, and some of those can start connecting, we'll have less problems, more wealth, more solutions. I think that, but then bring somebody with you. If you've got a company and you're building a platform or you're creating an organization, we got a whole school system full of young people that need to see you. I almost think it should be mandatory. And I may make that on this call thinking about it. Any company that's within Russell Center, you got to go find 2 interns or two mentees or apprentices that have an interest in what you're doing, because I guarantee they're there at APS. And I'll challenge APS. You need to ask every student that's attending in your school system, what is their dream? What is their aspiration? Because you should have a repository and a database of the wants, dreams, and desires of every kid that's in the school system. Why? How can you truly educate them and aspire to something if you don't know what inspires them? But then you could take that database, Kevin, and start matching companies based on what their interests are, and they get to see what's next. So yeah, bro, start solving our problems by focusing on them, but start thinking about the next generation's problem by looking to the next generation to bring them along. 2 ways that they can help. There's a technology company out right now that if they took that technology to a kid, it would light up in their head, and they can see, I can see exactly who I can be going forward, or maybe where I could go at the next level. But I never met you. I never knew your name, never knew what you were working on. So I was never inspired by you. And therefore, this company that I had in my mind that could have been $1 billion company, employed people, created jobs, helped people grow their own wealth, never came to fruition because we didn't take the time to create a pathway for a kid that dreamed. Sooner or later, those dreams in poor neighborhoods become nightmares. It's hard to dream when you live your entire existence in a 10 square block area. And if we're not taking the time, this is what I credit you for, Kevin, because you do it ferociously. You ferociously make time for the kids that you mentee or mentor. That they are ultimately, it is your responsibility to make sure that they have access to everything that they need to go wherever they want to go. And I applaud you for that, Chairman, because it has always been your guide right. If we had that same kind of, deliberate intention to make sure that we took this kid and make sure that they have everything they need to win, you don't need to do it at scale for 50 kids. Just do it for 1, do it for 2. I think we see a shift within 10 years.
Wow. And so the last question we have is, how can the people that are tuning in, that are watching this, how can they help to harness that talent that's south of I-20? How can they help the community that is being built by you and the team over at the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship? How can they make an impact?
First thing, just go to rcie.org, join our mailing list. Starting in 2021, we have some incredible things that we're going to launch into the marketplace. We want to be real disruptors. We want to do it differently. We want to be transformative in the way that we look at Black business and entrepreneurship and innovation inspiration. rcie.org, join our mailing list. Let's get involved, because there'll be several ways that people can get engaged based on service-based or what do they call it? Skill-based volunteerism, where if you're an accountant helping companies with accounting, if you're a lawyer helping companies with legal help that they may need, not just, doing something that maybe doesn't interest you. But then also, brother, it's join up. I mean, if you have an idea, if you were nervous about getting it started and you don't know where to start, starting in the top of 2021 in January, we're going to be bringing on stakeholders, folks that want to build companies, grow companies, start companies, and lose the fear, because we're going to create the supportive environment and community that will a safe place for you to fail and fly. So why not now? We need more companies, more businesses. Black businesses, create stronger Black communities. Black businesses hire Black people. I got a shirt that says "Exit is not my strategy." Our job is not to find the next Google or the next Facebook. This is not one of those moonshot shops. This is a shop to take a company from 300,000 in revenue to $1 million. And in that $700,000 growth, we'll still see you. To a VC, you're not even seen. We see you, but you've also created 8 jobs on the West Side. You created wealth for your individual household. You've left that survival mode that you've been in, and now you start thriving and being diverse. If you have a dream out there, that's the other way they can help, Kevin. Find themselves to us and let us help you create that pathway to make your dream come true.
Well, this has been great, brother. I thank you for the time. I know all of our students that will listen, all of our constituents, all of our family and friends that are listening appreciated this discussion. For those that also want to get engaged with the 100, you can go to our website as well, 100blackmen-8atlanta.org. For those that want to make year-end contributions, we're there as well, helping the community. And if you want to just learn more about what we've been able to do, please check out our website. We have our COVID response where we leaned in and we've been mentoring young men on Tuesdays, young women on Thursdays. We've been over at the Johnson STEM Activity Center teaching young people how to embark on careers in technology and build robots. We've been working with our college students with our career pipeline program, getting them ready to enter the workforce. And we look forward to working with the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship on some programming, hopefully in the months ahead. And so we're doing a lot of great work. Mentoring is our key, mentoring is our cornerstone. And we also provide tuition assistance to students. In 2019, we awarded $184,000 in scholarships. And we're looking to do something similar to that this year, even during the pandemic. But we need your help, need your support. So please support us as well. And we thank you all for your time today. Jay, again, this has been amazing. I know there are going to be a lot of people that are going to leverage these jewels, and it's going to help them in their careers, in their personal life as well. So thank you for the time. And unless you have anything else for the good of the order, we can break.
I'm just honored to serve, brother. Just trying to put a little paint where it ain't. I love to connect, man. So for all of you that are listening, if we didn't get to your question, I see a few that we didn't get to. Find me on LinkedIn. It's kind of like my quasi address book now. It's just Jay Bailey on LinkedIn. I love to continue the conversation. Let's build community together, guys. It's up to us. Thank you, Gooch, for your leadership, sir, Chairman. Thank you to the 100 Black Men for providing this platform. I'm proud to be a member. And there was a time where the 100 Black Men had tremendous influence and relevance. They still do. But I think under your leadership, especially shout out to the new class that just came in, I am floored by the talent that we brought into the organization. It's time for us to step up and get to the next level. And I think, Kevin, you're the right leader for us to do that with.
Thank you, brother. And for those tuning in, we have some scheduled, some Let's Talk Leadership sessions scheduled with Zing Shaw, the head of diversity and inclusion for Starbucks. We have Courtney Gibson coming up, who's the president of Loop Capital. And we have some other great folks that are going to join us and have these discussions. So we hope you tune in the next time. Check out our social channels for the dates and times. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Jay, again, thank you very much. Give our regards to the wife.
I will.
And let's build as we climb, brother.
My brother. Take care, sir.
Thank you. All right. Bye.